So hi, I'm Nancy Schick, creator of the Third Ear Conflict Resolution Process. And what I do in that process is I use 7 choices first to help you understand your response to individual conflicts before you engage with the other person or people that you're in conflict with. Then we move into taking 5 actions that are based on mediation techniques. So this Third Ear Thursday series is part of a webinar series that I started kind of at the height of the pandemic last year. And here in New York, when people were just so fraught with what in the world am I going to do? We were socially distanced from each other and we were really scared because people were dying all around us. And obviously, we've since then had more added to us. We've had the racial conflicts, we've had protests, we've had an insurgence at the Capitol. I don't need to recreate all that for you because I know that that brings enough stress. But what I do is I open this webinar every third Thursday of the month, with the exception of this month because it was the start of a new year, and so we pushed it back a week. But we will go back in February to the third Thursday of the month at 3 p.m. because I like threes. I think it's easy for you to remember, and I try to take one thing off of your mental plate and make it a little easier for you. So what we do is we invite you to BYOB. That means bring your own breakdown. And part of that is because I've also discovered that usually when I start to really go into this breakdown stage, I've now started to see that if I can power through it, I'm about to hit a big breakthrough. So I invite you to embrace when you're in a breakdown and then just reach out, come on that third Thursday, bring whatever it is you're dealing with, and let's work through it to give you that quick relief so you can start moving forward again. I also will do a 30-minute breakthrough call with you for free if you want to do that, and I'll put links to the notes to the video. But I'm also going to do something a little different this week, and I actually started that already. Most of you already know that, as I have a special guest today, and because of that, I did decide to record part of this meeting. Now, normally I don't record the meetings because I want you to be able to come and speak freely in whatever messy way that you sometimes have to work through some of these very explosive, emotionally charged topics. The couple of caveats that I always bring to this, though, is that I like the think method. If you're not familiar with that, is I want you to think that, is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? And is it kind? These are the things you want to filter through before you come into this meeting and speak up. And that's including in the chat. It's because we're here to support and encourage each other and help each other through some of these difficult conflicts. We definitely don't want to add to any of the trauma and the pain because we're all being affected by these things. So with all that being said, I'm very excited. And it sounds so great. Like here I am saying, come in. I mean, you have a safe space, but here are all these rules, right? And it's because I want you to feel safe and I want you to feel safe with each other. So today I made the exception because Leslie Short is here. And Leslie has become a dear friend. She's a colleague. And Leslie, I don't know if you know this, but you've become a mentor in so many ways for me in the diversity and inclusion space. I watch what you do and I see how you handle these topics. And I've learned a lot from you. So it's an absolute pleasure to have you here. Yeah. So a couple of other things I just want to give you guys a little bit more about Leslie is she's the owner and CEO of the Kavu Group, which does D&I consulting. She's a mediator and trainer, chaplain, and where I met her was in the minority and women business enterprise group in the city of New York. So she's also certified as a MWBE, which means if any of you watching are looking for a consultant and you want to meet another D&I criteria and grant that contract to someone, Leslie is somebody I highly trust and recommend. So her new book that's out, you can see it behind her in the distance a little bit, and she was smart enough to bring it right here, is Expand Beyond Your Current Culture, Diversity and Inclusion for CEOs and Leadership. I think you can tell what this book is about. And I've pulled up the description on Amazon also because I want to make sure we hit on some of the key points. But Leslie, let's talk about why you felt that a book was necessary, because D&I programs have been around for a long time. And I think we all know that they're falling short. So tell me the kinds of things you're seeing and what inspired you to write the book.
When I was looking just to see what was out there, everything was very PhD and everything was in social science or in the African American section. And I went, well, why is it in the African American section? We know what's going on, and who's going to social science? And I understand why it was social science, but there was nothing in business. And I was like, how do you not have or have one or two and that's it? Or they were told, oh, you have to order them. They're not in store. And I was, truth be told, I was given an offer to write the book. I was doing the
Totally.
speaking engagement. Yes. So I am very blessed, I will say, that I did not go searching for a publisher or had a manuscript. I was at a speaking engagement. The publisher was there. We did a few phone calls, did the contract, and he told me to go write. And I really wanted to write it from a perspective of if I was sitting in a cafe or a bar with someone. It wasn't going to come from a PhD. This was going to be from, I see you, we see you. What are you doing? Why are you doing that? Why do you keep doing that? And here's what we see. So I interviewed probably about 30 something people, and they filled out a questionnaire on things that they wanted CEOs and leadership to really honestly know. And I didn't use their names. I used different industries. So I had from the church to the airline, to school teachers, to professors, to people that work in sporting goods stores, to restaurants, and really just said, this is not only my voice you're hearing saying we see you, but there's others. And these are the people you're hiring. And here's some ways that you can make some changes, shifts. But it really comes down to who are you as a leader? And that's what I wanted to speak about. Who are the people that are the leaders that are using this title, and what's their added value to the conversation?
Yeah, because I think, also being in this space and I've done training and I've worked for some of the colleges here in New York as well as several employers, but I see it too. Even when I went to one of the more recent positions and trainings that I was doing, I looked around the room and realized I was I was in a room of mostly women. And I kept thinking, where are the men? And I know that the men are interested because I work in a lot of male-dominated industries, right? And some people will laugh and say which aren't, but but and this is something that you and I talk about regularly off camera, right? Is look, I get that conversation, but I also know that it's not productive to just go around saying, oh, there it is, point fingers, that they're bad. It's like this is literally in the blind spots of some people, right? They don't realize because when you're used to looking around and everybody looks like you, it's the one that doesn't look like you that stands out, right? And it doesn't matter who you are. That's just the way it's human beings, and it's part of the way that our brains function, et cetera. So I get it, but I definitely am starting to notice these things. And I was also aware that not only were there not men there, we do have a pretty diverse, in that particular training, it was a pretty diverse racial and religious cross section of people because we are in New York, right? But I also did notice that there weren't a lot of people of color in leadership positions. And I think this is what we're trying to bring forward, right? Is that our leadership still is lacking, and not just the diversity, but obviously then with the inclusion and the equity portion, right? Because we're
Let's take a few steps back.
Yeah.
Yeah, but let's take a few steps back and I think that's what made me want to write it, because we keep jumping.
Yeah.
Keep jumping to leadership, but have we even defined what diversity is? So, everyone's so busy checking a box. It's bigger than gender, race, LGBTQ plus, disabilities, sight seen and unseen, and veterans. So let's break that down. And what does that mean? Okay, so if we use that as a baseline, and then we have the diversity of thought and religion and politics and all the other subcategories that make up who we are, inclusion is not belonging. You belong to a book club, you know, inclusion is my voice valid within the space for which I'm in? Do I have the proper tools to, once you've invited me in, to keep moving? Equity is, do I even have the access to the tools?
Yeah.
You know, so let's look at all of that before. And now if we can figure that portion out, what is the pipeline for leadership? There's some amazing people sitting in spots knowing that that leadership up there is never going to move. So how are they going to move? Is it clear? Not a lot of the things that I'm working on is, number one, it's company culture as well as diversity and inclusion. You can bring in all the Black and brown folks you want and sit them in a room. Big deal. We're all diverse, you know.
And I want to hit that point, because I know that comes up a lot too, is thank you. Because I've often said that, like, clearly one of the reasons I like amplifying women of color, men of color, people of different disabilities and gender identities, right? Like, I try to amplify all of them, because it's exactly what you're saying, is that it's not enough to just check the box. And you know, even though I can represent a certain portion of what it is to be a white woman, I've also not the same age as every white woman in the world. And I say in the world, and not even in New York. I didn't grow up in New York, right? So I don't represent that, right? And so I was like, and yet I don't fully identify with where I grew up anymore either. And so I think that's been one of the conversations that's been missing in this bigger conversation of diversity, is like, how do we do this and still not box everybody in just so that we're slapping labels on them and seeing them as individuals? And are you seeing paths toward that being in the conversation of culture?
Well, who are you? You know, I always ask that. What is your added value to this conversation of diversity and inclusion? And when I ask that to CEOs and leaderships, they're like, And I'm like, not for the company. Who are you? And when you figure out who you are and what's in your bag and all that comes along with it, then you get to actually step into leadership in a brand new way, because you're looking at other people, not for only what's on their resume, but for other things that they're bringing in. And so if you are that type of leader, that you begin to understand yourself and your added value and how someone else brings added value to you, you actually start to build your company culture with that diversity of thought. And you stop the madness when you see it. And you're not scared not to be liked because you tell someone that's not acceptable. You actually set the tone for your HR people to expand beyond the 6 places that they put out ads and the 3 people that they use for HR. You demand that they go out and reach beyond that. That's what a diversity of leadership is, because then when you're looking for diversity, the state of already coming into a place that is moving towards addition, adding on, building and growing diversity, and diversity of people, thoughts, places, things, partners, then you can find your place, that inclusion, and then you can actually tie in and bring your talents, your equity. Because it's not only the company giving us equity, we each come with our own personal equity. But we don't give that if we're not getting that. And that's the part that I try to also work with companies. You're not actually getting the best out of people, because you're not giving them the best. It's not warm and fuzzy. I had one CEO that's like, that's too warm and fuzzy. I said, okay. And the trick is, people have stayed at this company for a very long time. But the younger people coming in are demanding much more diversity, much more inclusion, equity, to understand how to move and how to get promoted. They want to see a change, you know? And you know how I feel about change. I always say they want to see growth. They want to grow within themselves and their careers, and they want to grow within the company to grow. It's not easy.
It's not, and I think that's another thing that that we've been in conversation in your group, right? Which I want to encourage anybody that's watching. Leslie's group meets every 2 weeks on Wednesdays at 5 o'clock Eastern in the Village Collective. I'm going to put a link to that as well. And if you've missed the prior episodes, they're now in podcast form. So I'm going to put a bunch of links to this video because look, we're change agents. Like, we're taking that on. When you ask, who are we? Right? Like, I can say, for me, I've been wanting this change for most of my life. I can remember it. I can remember experiences as a child. I can remember experiences throughout my life that I said, something's wrong here. I don't get it. And even, as like 5 or 6 years old. And that's on my end, being, in the privileged class, right? Or in the privileged race anyway, maybe not class.
We're going to think about that in 2 weeks, so I can't wait.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the kind of stuff we talk about in Leslie's group. But so yes, I am promoting her because this is really valuable stuff, and it's not easy to work through it. And it does take time. And I think that's one of the other challenges that we're up against is that, you can see the protests aren't going on anymore. And in one way, I'm okay with that because I think the protests are really valuable for raising awareness. But at a certain point, the awareness is here. You'd have to be kind of living under a rock or in a cave or really isolated to not know that we have racial issues in this country.
Did you not see what I posted this morning?
You're right. I have not seen it.
Okay, so I will not call out the company name. ICM promoted 14 agents, talent agents. This agency in Hollywood has the majority of Black and brown celebrities. There was not one agent, Black or brown, that was promoted. These are the people that's going out and pitching. These are the people that are bringing roles. These are the people that's hiring, like blue lighting and helping with makeup and all. Not one. 2021. So yes, if you're a protester, if that's what you do and you do it well and you're doing protest, I need you to continue to protest because that's what you do. I don't do that part. I will be in the office. I will be the posting. I will be calling them out with action though. Because calling them out just to say you're not doing it, I'm going, what happened? Where was that conversation? I asked them this morning, where was the breakdown? That's what I want to know.
And I'm guessing you haven't gotten a response yet.
No, I haven't gotten a response. And then someone else posted something from another company and they were like, did you see this, Leslie? And we believe it was taken down. And it's not to expose companies, yet it is to expose companies because we're in 2021. And it is okay to say we're not prepared for diversity.
Right.
It is okay. Not acceptable. I want everyone to understand language. I said it's okay because you have to know where you are and who you are. But then on the next breath, I want to hear, how do we get ready?
Right.
Because I get enough of those calls as well. How do we get ready? And I go from the mailroom to the boardroom.
Right, and that's something we talked about at the UN, and you and I think on our very first coffee we had, right, and we ended up talking for forever. I think I even walked you part of the way home because we were still chatting. It's like we're both very passionate about this, but I know that was something that we talked a lot about at the UN is that, and I did a video this week because I do my little weekly video, my 3-minute one, and I talked about that. It's like so many of us have been waiting for, the right president or the right government or senator or whoever, right? Or, the corporation to do it, the leader in the corporation to do it. We're waiting for someone else to be the hero that fixes 400 years of systemic racism in this country, right? And look, we can't change the past, but we can create the future, and we need to do this. And this is what we talked about at the UN too, is like sustainable peace requires a top-down as well as a bottom-up approach. We need it at every level. So like you said earlier, if you're a protester, again, I said I'm kind of okay with it, but if protesting is your way of amplifying voices and raising awareness, and that's what you're good at, don't stop doing it. maybe stop the riots, and that's, I don't care what you're on.
Protests, yes.
I don't care where you are in that, and please don't storm the Capitol and break in and try and kill people, and don't kill people, right? Lots of things like that, right? So we know this. That doesn't fit the think method, right? But, you know, and I don't mean to make light of this, but really recognizing that we all have a role in this, and we all have different skills and abilities that we can bring to these conversations. So bring them.
And you know what? You have to, you know how I always say, I hate to say this word, but you have to have that space. But you do have to, that's company culture. You have to create the space where there's, again, it doesn't have to be warm, fuzzy feelings, but that communication happens. Because what happens sometimes is people want to work so hard to achieve a goal or a number that the conversation that's had in the office is only about work. Therefore, there is zero expansion on other things that can actually help accent the work. They're not looking outside of their industry. They are not watching, reading outside of what's in front of them. And therefore, that diversity of thought gets shut down, let alone diversity of cultures. So if you don't leave that space to explore and communicate, you're shutting off half of the power of your workforce.
It's true, and I've seen this over the years too. And you know, I work mostly with risk managers, right? So I can usually talk dollars and cents with them and show them like this is the path, right? And I'm, you know, that's my skill set, right? So I use my skill set in that way as like, let's talk about the, you know, kind of what you're getting at is that it's not an A plus B equals C, right? You're not going to see this, you know, direct path. It's just like any other success, right? You've probably seen that meme, right? That people think the success goes like this in some sort of trajectory, and it's more like, right?
Every day of my life.
Exactly. And during the pandemic, it's like, sometimes it's just like, stop, not even anything happening, right? and that's okay.
Yeah.
And that's even with this, like, okay, so maybe, you know, maybe we're not always making movement every day. We're not always driving like machines, but I think some of that's also the way that the culture of work generally is changing, right? We've moved more to knowledge economy, right? We've moved more into these white collar jobs, as they call them, right? And I don't really like that. I'm from a blue collar family, so I don't even like that, right? It's like, no one actually wears those blue collars that I can think of, right? But it's an old term. And this is another thing that I like to bring up, you know, is that we have these words in our vernacular that, you know, we don't even know where they came from. And that's part of this, is just recognizing that it's so deeply ingrained at so many levels. And it doesn't mean you have to have like the language police around and go around trying to catch people doing things wrong. But being able to hear something that's not effective, that's where I talk to risk managers, is like, that's just not effective. It's not going to move you where you want to go. So that's,
they also need to know where they want to go.
Well, exactly. And a lot of people don't know. And you think about it, like even in one of our recent conversations and, you know, in another group, it's this, you know, kind of experience of, I don't even know other than I took a job, and, you know, and it's like, and there's that moment, right? Like nobody goes in. I remember doing orientations, you know, when I was at United Parcel Service, and no one came in there and said, I'm going to really suck at this job. I am so excited I got this job and I'm going to go suck at it, right? It's like we come in with some idea, and if we don't have the leadership guiding us on a path, then we end up disgruntled. We end up with no path forward. We don't understand diversity and inclusion because we're looking to the leadership to show us what this is all about. And if you don't know where you're going, you're not going to go anywhere, right?
Well, it's always interesting when I go in and I'm like, I would like to have your mission and your vision statement. And there's become this thing of, no, you can't change it. But then I go, are you living it? And so there's probably about 5 different companies I'm working with right now. We're working through mission and vision and code of conducts. And I'm like, those are what I can call, I hate to say it like this, but low hanging fruit when we first start coming into work, especially if you have a committee that's first starting to work together. Those are great things to start to pull together so you
Yeah.
can see the thought process starting to change.
Mhm.
Because everyone's out for their own division in the very beginning.
Right. And they're not always aligning with the core values of the company because sometimes they don't even know what they are.
And that's what half of it is. And then when you try to define it, leadership has to sign off on this is what it is. And this is what we're really going to live now. And that sometimes is where it gets a little shaky because they either don't want change or why do we need to redefine things? Can't we just go on as it is? And I'm like, yes, if it was 1946, no, even then, this is a new day. Where do you stand for? And then not what you stand for outside of your doors, because perception and illusion, we need to speak about the reality of what's inside the doors. What are your employees? What stories are they going to tell? Because they're the first to tweet something when it's wrong, and they very rarely tweet when it's good.
And just like customer service, right? We teach this in that realm too as business owners. We talk in our groups about that. Is you're absolutely right. Like what is, I believe it's something like 13 people will out of 100 or something will go on and blast you for even the slightest thing. And all those other ones are saying nothing.
Right.
And you don't even know what they're doing. But yeah, definitely you're going to see about 13% of your employees probably also be the first ones to blast you publicly. And in one way, you know, it's the same thing. You want to call people out, but you also want to give them a space to, you know, to apologize. And I'm big on the complete apology, right? Not just I'm sorry, but I want to know specifically what you're sorry for, because I want to know that you have the insight to tell me that you're going to be different,
Because
right?
I always say hashtag I'm sorry is broken.
Exactly.
And I'm someone that believes in I'm sorry too, but I'm exhausted. I'm sorry. I'm done. I want to know the steps. What are you going to do now that you recognize that there is an issue or a conflict? Where are you moving from here? Please outline that to me. Even 2 steps.
Yeah, and I have video on that too, of course. is that, you know, it's acknowledging specifically what you did, saying what you're going to do to not have that happen again, and then doing it.
Or doing the best to say, listen, we realize we're wrong. We'll do our best to rectify it. And yes, like you said, here's some things we're going to be doing.
Right.
But it's not a Band-Aid.
Exactly.
Because it's been used as a Band-Aid. Like
and
everyone gets
abracadabra. I said, I'm sorry, I waved the wand.
Oh, we're going to have a diversity and inclusion committee. Well, who's on this committee if everybody looks like you and sounds like you? Please tell me, because the Black and brown folks want no parts of this committee because it's not their responsibility to educate you.
Which brings us back to your book. And so those of you that, you know, that aren't used to watching me and Leslie together, this is what it is to have coffee with us. But that does bring me to something in your book called Nothing About Us Without Us. And I think we know what that's about, but why don't you give us some examples? Because I think that's another piece that's really unclear for people. We've gotten really into the hashtags and the sound bites, but when it comes time to take action on things, we're not always sure what to do. So let's talk about that.
Well, then Nothing About Us Without Us is a few things. One, it came from the disabilities community. That's where it originated from. So that was something that I also found out. So that is exactly what it means. Nothing about them without them. I use it in 2 ways. Nothing about us without us. If you're going to be creating programming, reaching out to communities, having conversations, doing ads, doing PR, you need to have someone, more than someone, hopefully, in the room that actually speaks to that community, actually understands what's happening. But here's the other thing. If I'm inside a company, nothing about us without us. So I want the advertising, the PR, the marketing, the social media, the attorney, they should all be in the room. And they should all be signing off together. And they should understand the focus and vision of what that ad, that project, that program is. Because here's the issue. One does one thing, right? The social media puts out something else. Marketing is on their own world, and PR's over here pitches something else. And it's all over the place. And yet they didn't speak to anyone within that community that could give them advice. And that's why I say sometimes speak to more than one, because we're not all monolithic. If you look and see what's happened on so many different projects where they say, well, we bought in an agency. Well, what did you allow the agency to do? See, that's my next thing. What powers did they have to have these conversations? Or were they just bought in, consulted, and gone? Did they walk through? Are they an agency that understands advertising, marketing, and PR along with DEI, along with culture and community?
And I can tell you, as you know, because I'm also still a lawyer and I'm still practicing law, that look, I have clients that are even afraid to have me in the room in conversations like that because of their fear. And this is the other reason that I do these 30 Thursdays, right? Is because there's not a lot of opportunity to go someplace and have these conversations. A lot of businesses have been, like, just don't talk about those things. So like kind of ignore them so that nobody says anything that might get us sued. And what happens is most of my clients, especially when I'm, dealing with them as mediator or litigator, right? They're coming to me because they just found out for the first time that those conversations are still going on.
But wait a minute. So I always say to companies, you have two options. You hire someone like me, another agency like mine. You don't have to hire me. You either hire that DEI, which is not race relations. We get into that for a second.
Oh yeah, we'll come back to that.
Okay,
yeah.
We'll come back to that. You hire that agency to really work with you. You have to open all your doors, and that's a line item. We don't do this for free.
Right.
We get back to that again. And or your next line item could be the attorney. Which way would you like to go? I'm in a great position because I ran advertising, PR, and marketing department. So I know that.
And for the record, for those of you who don't know, Leslie's been quite successful. Go look at her bio.
I'm the mediator and conflict coach, and I work very closely with attorneys. I'm a frustrated attorney, but I'm the first one to say I am not an attorney. But do I read contracts? Did I go for entertainment law and copyright and trademark and all? Do I have an understanding? Absolutely. And I can get it to a point to say, yeah, let's get the lawyers in here now. It's necessary. It is necessary. You cannot speak to a community and not know who you're speaking to. That's a religious community. That is a racial community, a cultural community. I don't care if you went into a beauty salon. If you're trying to sell, a hat and everybody in there's getting weaves, that's not going to be the same thing unless you have a Sunday hat going to church, or it's just, you need to know who you're speaking to.
Right.
And that everyone's not monolithic. Do you have people that you say Black, or you say African-American, you say Latina, you say Latinx, and then there's a whole nother line of lineages of, you need to know, and you have to take the time to really think. And it's the same thing with casting. You're casting someone with disability. Are you hiring an able person to be, an able body to be in that chair, or to portray that? Or there are a lot of actors and actresses that are able, different body. I like to say are different beings, abilities that are there, that are able assessors. So you have to really think about who are you speaking to and why are you speaking to them? Because for most companies, if it's about the dollar, then can you be respectful as you take it? How about that? That's not what's happening. It has to stop being they and them and figure out how we and us move forward. And I know that's a big thing for some people, but there's a collective of the we. I think how we get to we. It's not one big we. There's a collective of how we get to we, and there's a collective how we get to us. But they and them, when you're still pointing the fingers at they and them, that's where it stays. And that's just the lack of, at this point, unwillingness to understand and see differences and respect differences. That's all it comes down to at this point.
And I know we've talked about this as well, and people that hear me say this a lot too, is that you can listen to someone without agreeing with them. You can try to understand them and understand motivation behind behavior that you don't like without condoning behavior, right? And I talked a lot about that after I was assaulted, right? Is that I still held this young man accountable. And it was primarily because I wanted him to have a path forward. And anybody that's got kids, you know that, right? That if you keep letting your kids off the hook, if my mom had let me off the hook, I would not be the person I am today. She was strict, and I'm kind of glad. Maybe not when I was a teenager, and I'm sure I called her a big meanie more than once as a child, right? Because I wanted a cookie, and she would give me a cookie, right? And it's like, but that's how we sometimes act. Right, we're taking that kind of behavior forward, and it's like, no, you can listen and respect each other's boundaries. You don't have to adopt their behavior. You don't even have to condone it. There are some collective agreements that we've made, and I think we're struggling, just like corporations you were talking about earlier, we're struggling with that in the country. But we do have some universal principles that we're not really adhering to. And so that's the other part. And it's like, it's bottom line is it's a long process, and it's hard to get, this is kind of our country's a social experiment, right? Your corporations, your individual business is your own version of that. But if you're not clear on where you're going, again, you're going to go all over the place anyway. And it's fine if that's the way that you want to do it. Just understand that, yes, you have free speech, you have lots of freedoms, but that's not without consequences.
You just can't block someone else's free speech and
right.
or opportunity. So I'm a big believer. You can stand on the rock for which you believe. I have no problem with that. The moment you get off of your rock and you come towards myself, others, and when I say others, anyone that doesn't walk like you, sound like you, or think like you, that's where there's an issue.
Absolutely. And that's what historically the law in our country was supposed to be about. Now, I say was supposed to be because we know, like, you and I weren't even considered for different reasons, right? But we weren't even considered in the foundations of the country. But I think, maybe, because I want to believe this, and we could do a whole different episode on that, right? But I think maybe seeing what we've done and what's still possible, maybe if the founding fathers were alive today, they'd have different views on certain things. I don't know.
But you have to realize.
So,
right. We can't go back, but we have to call it what it is. So I had a conversation later last night, because I don't do race relations. That's not the training that I do.
Right.
Which I'm educated on it, but it's a different type of training. But we do have to call it what it is.
Yeah.
This country and system was not built for Black or brown folks. We were a commodity. We were sold and sold again. So therefore, though we are a minority, when we can say women, at the end of the day, when you walk into a room, you are accepted into that room clearly by the color of your skin. I walk into that room and there's still, why is she here? Even when sometimes when I'm going in to speak. And so there is a judgment of value. Now here, I personally, that's on them, that's not on me. You all figure that out. I know why I'm here. But the reality of it is, that is what it is. Yeah. And we can all say we want to figure this out, but we can't figure it out until we recognize and respect the fact that when we walk into the room, and if we had the same amount of money in our pockets, and if we had the same outfit on, and all of the same, there's still not a sameness. And I don't hang your hat on that, but there are people that hang their hat on that.
Yeah.
And we need to recognize that. and then keep moving around those people and keep it going.
Well, and that is part of it. You know, I said that's something that we've been struggling with also, is that there's this frustration, and I feel it sometimes too, where, you know, look, I mentioned that last night. I have family members that have just broken my heart lately, because I've seen parts of them I didn't know existed. And yeah, you can see I get a little emotional because you know, like, these are people, granted, they're distant family members, and, you know, and I'm seeing, but their family, it makes me wonder what else is inside me, right? There's the whole conversation around this when you're coming into it for the first time. And I share that openly because I know that that first time you're confronted with how you think the world isn't that way, you get scared and you wonder if you're a bad person, and then you react. Just be with that. This is uncomfortable. I have a program I call uncomfortable, you know, let's get uncomfortable, for that reason, because that's the only way we're going to pull through it. And that's why I say bring your own breakdown around it. Right. But you're absolutely right. You know, you and I can go into the same space. Now, granted, I might go into a different space where I'm the only white person in there, and then I might not feel comfortable. But bottom line, we have to call that out too. That's much less likely for me to happen to me.
Right.
Right? It's just pure numbers.
Absolutely.
Now, if I lived in Nigeria, that might be different, right? But I don't live in Nigeria. So let's talk about what's really going on. Like, we don't need all those diversion tactics about what's this, what's that. Just be with the discomfort.
And
Be with it and look at it.
Why?
Right.
Why am I feeling? What is it that's triggering me to feel this way? What is it that when I see that type of person or I'm in this situation that bothers me? And that's part of that's why I created my own bias quiz, because I didn't like the ones that were out there that were scenarios. We have to look within. Bias is within, and say, what is it about me that I don't like that?
Yes. Yeah, it's not about me telling you why you don't like it. You're not inside me. I'm not inside you. Like, I can only go, even if I think you're telling me something that's not true. I can only go with what you tell me, because that's where you are right now.
And then I can make a judgment from that.
Right. And me trying to tell you who you are or who you should be never goes well.
Ever.
But if I invite you,
relationship, work,
exactly, like, come on, we do. That's where our child comes out and says, you're not my mama, you're not my parent, right? Whatever it might be. But in all reality, like, but what we might do is accept an invitation to explore.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, that's what I'm doing, is inviting. And I thank you so much. I know you've got to go. So I want to give you a minute to just anything else you want to make sure you get in before we let you get back to your day.
No, you know, the book is Expand Beyond Your Current Culture, because that's what I'm hoping people will do. Expand beyond their current culture, or what they see, or what they thought they knew or know, and open up and just let yourself be in the moment of trying to understand. And then hopefully with understanding, we can start tearing down some of the walls that are there that are not giving equity to those that deserve it. I'd love for everyone, if you care to join the webinars, they are there. Check out social media. And absolutely, if you have time, subscribe to Visibility Unlimited, the podcast. Great conversation. As Nancy can attest to and always contributes. And we cover lots of different topics. That's what we're living today.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also encourage people that, you know, I know for me, I'm very protective of my LinkedIn profile, but you can follow now. So I encourage you to follow Leslie if you're on LinkedIn, and, you know, go find the podcast, go find the book. I haven't gotten a chance to read it yet because it just came out on January 12th. So I will be ordering it and reading it when it'll be in my stack of books, and then you'll see my review. I am sure it's amazing, because I know Leslie and I know her work, and I just thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. I so appreciate the time, and always love spending time with you. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.